Hello and welcome to this Young Person in MR discussion. It's absolutely fantastic to be joined by Kristin Luck. Kristin, thank you so much for coming and joining us and sharing your opinions with us today. Do you want to first of all give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure, I'm Kristin Luck. I'm the president and CMO of Decipher, which is based in the United States.
Awesome. And we also got my colleague Eliza alongside us. Eliza, do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself as well?
Yeah, my name's Eliza and I work alongside Jack at VisionsLive, an online qualitative research company. And I'm really excited about this discussion.
Awesome. So we're here today to talk about young people in MR, and I suppose the lack of them, and the lack of retention that goes on in the industry, and all these kind of key topics that go along with it. And Kristin seems to be a bit of an expert on the matter. Eliza and I caught one of your blog posts, Kristin, and we really enjoyed it. So first of all, I suppose let's give it a broad introduction. Can you tell us about that blog post and kind of what inspired you to write it?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate to be asked this year by SMR to participate in their Young Researcher of the Year competition. So, I got an opportunity to talk to a few of the people in the competition and sort of work with them on some of their research questions that they had while they were developing their proposals and their actual presentations. And so it did get me to thinking, that I remember being in the early stages of my career, and that I used to work with lots of young people, and obviously I've gotten older over the years. I know it's hard to believe from looking at me, but and it just seems like we're not getting as much new talent into the industry as we used to, and I think that might be the result of a couple different things. Awareness is one of them. Education is another point I touched on. And then I think more than anything, making research really meaningful for the next generation, and also creating some mentoring opportunities. And so that's what I really focused my blog post around.
Fantastic. So how do you think, following on from that, Kristin, how do you think we can go about, inspiring and passing over our research knowledge, to the next generation? And what do you think is the best way of going about that?
Well, I think that there's a lot of discussion in the business world in general, not just in market research, about how to create more meaningful work for people. And I think that means a few different things. I think it means providing outlets for individuals to sort of share their unique talents, which can be challenging, particularly in larger businesses. I think, people feeling like you're making an impact on the lives of others is really important, and I don't know that that's been a particular focus for us in the industry, although, we spend all of our time, making recommendations or helping create new products that better people's lives. I don't feel like there's been a whole lot of emphasis on, what we do as an industry to sort of impact the lives of others. And then I also think putting more emphasis on work-life balance is important. When I started out in research in the early 90s, I don't even think I had a cell phone. I was at the office all the time. I worked these really, really long hours, and I still work long hours, but now I'm connected in all these different ways. I have my iPhone and my laptop, and I can kind of work from anywhere. And I think for a lot of millennials or people just coming up in the industry, they're used to having a certain amount of flexibility and being connected all the time. And I oftentimes see, particularly in larger firms, that there is just a lack of understanding of that connectedness and how we can really utilize that to our benefit to make a better work-life situation for a lot of the people that are coming up in the business.
And so would you say that's the biggest factor then, Kristin, like isn't that lack of work-life balance? It's not just a case of would you say the salary's got something to do with it as well, that young graduates are not attracted to it, or is it just the main factor, would you say, is the lack of work-life balance?
I don't think that salary is unimportant to millennials. I think everybody wants. I think motivated by money than perhaps they were when I was coming up. When I started out my career, I was just so focused on getting ahead, and I didn't really give a lot of thought to whether or not my work was particularly meaningful or impactful to others. And I do think that that's a generational difference. And I do think that there's a higher desire for, hey, I'm not going to work 80, 90 hours a week and also not have meaningful work. And so I think it's a balance of all these different things. It's about being impactful. It's about having something meaningful, and it's also about having some flexibility in terms of how you work and where you work from. So I don't think it's just one thing in isolation. I think it's a combination of those different things.
I think retention is obviously a really, really big issue as well. Because, the problem of, you mentioned in your blog, it's hard to attract young graduates, but not only that, it's hard to, keep them in the industry, keep them interested and engaged. And, why do you think there is such a, high turnover of young graduates?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes, it definitely goes back to what I was just talking about in terms of, creating meaning and being impactful. But, it's interesting, and I mentioned this in my blog. Martin Sorrell he recently spoke at that annual MRS conference, and one of the things that he talked about were some of the challenges of obtaining that sort of top talent. And what's interesting is that he said, that millennials are traditionally sort of attracted to firms that are perceived as creative and flexible and innovative. And when you think about our industry, that's not really how we're perceived. So it's not a huge surprise that that millennials aren't really attracted to market research, particularly as the business, in terms of how the business is currently structured. When you look at some of the statistics around millennials and work, most millennials have already changed jobs, careers, and employers, and most expect to stay at the same job less than 3 years. So, that's why creating meaningful work, creating work that's impactful, making sure that we are respectful and not just respectful, but also understand how millennials work. They're more collaborative, that they're more wired, that they need a little more freedom, a little more latitude, I think is really important in terms of us dating. And I think it's also an awareness issue. I mean, I probably travel half the year, and I have to tell you, it's really rare that I meet someone new in the industry that outside of the industry that has any inkling of what market research is or what we actually do. And that when I go to universities, lots of times there's a market research class within a business program, but a lot of people in that class don't know that market research is actually a career. So I think, some of it too is just creating awareness around our business and what the different opportunities are.
Do you think, Kristin, that there should be more of a obviously set pathway? Because, it seems to be the reoccurring theme that young people everyone just falls into the industry because there isn't this, set education and pathway. And I noticed, obviously, you studied journalism. So how did you find out about the industry? What attracted you?
Yeah. I just, I kind of fell into it, honestly, and I feel like most of the people that I know in this business have sort of fallen into it in a similar way that I have. I was a journalism major. I have a degree in public relations. And I took a statistics class in university and really loved it, and I just happened to get a job as a research assistant at a social science research firm while I was still in school. And after I graduated, obviously my first goal was, to find a job. And I, at the time, that was really before job postings on the internet, I bought the LA Times when I was still living in Oregon and went through and circled ads for research assistants and happened to get a job at Lieberman in Los Angeles. So, like I said, I just kind of fell into it. I do feel like there's more programs now available. The University of Georgia in the U.S. has a program. I think I mentioned this in my blog post, but the University of Connecticut has a market research certification program now. I know there's a few informal certification programs that you can take in the States now. But you're right. There isn't really a set job path. And for me, I think in some ways that was almost helpful to my career because at Lieberman and in particular, which was my first market research job, I got to wear a lot of different hats, and I would say and encourage people that are just starting out in their career to kind of do the same thing, like do one job in a research firm, go to a large firm where there's lots of different roles and figure out what you really enjoy doing and what you're good at. I started out in the field department at Lieberman, and then I moved into more of an analyst role, and then I went to Nielsen and worked in operations, and so I had all these opportunities to really try out a lot of different a lot of different roles and a lot of learn a lot of different techniques and ways of working within a research firm. And I think that's really important as you're sort of starting out your career, is to try lots of different things, and don't be afraid to try something that maybe you don't know how to do. I mean, I probably didn't know how to do 3/4 of the things that I was supposed to when I got a job, but I knew I would figure it out. And so I think that's a lot of it, is just having the fortitude to be passionate enough about something just to give it a shot.
You mentioned there just like all the different, it's such a multi-dimensional industry, there are so many different fields to it, but how would you, as a young person, what would you say to them to sort of entice them into the industry and really sell it? What do you think are the real strengths of the industry for a young person?
Yeah, well, I think if you love working with data, this is an amazing time to be a researcher, because there was, it's pretty much just primary research data. So we collected it, we analyzed it, and that was it. That was all the data we had access to. Now there's all of these ancillary or data sources, which to me, from a research perspective, makes the industry so much more exciting. I'd like to think of researchers as storytellers, and that's really how I position market research to new grads is, hey, this is a storytelling experience. If you're comfortable with data, then that's really what it is, and that's what our role is as researchers or storytellers. And so now, rather than just having primary research data, now all of a sudden you have all these other ancillary data sources. You have point of sale data, you have social media data, you have CRM data, and so I feel like it opens up the world to us in a really new way. And I think more than ever, there are lots of opportunities to be a data entrepreneur in ways that were never available when I was, just starting out my research career. And so I think that's the thing that I really try to plug to millennials is, hey, don't feel constrained by, how the big research firms do things. There's so many opportunities for startups and doing interesting things with data. I was co-chairing a conference a couple months ago in Chicago, and we had Nick Drew come out and speak, and he was a guy that I was really fortunate to meet in Australia, and he's a perfect example of a market research data entrepreneur. Young guy, was looking at all the social media data and basically went in and predicted Australia's Hot 100 before the radio station could predict it. I think he got like 90% of the songs right. And this is a great example of what you can do with data if you're just creative and there's something that you're interested in. And so that he's like a perfect example to me of what that next generation of researchers is all about, is that curiosity and really just going for something.
That's interesting, Kristin. So do you see, you've used this social media example, obviously social media is something that millennials will be themselves really comfortable with. So do you see kind of this new rise in big data and obviously social media, but also the newer kind of methodologies within market research? So we're seeing a lot of online research, we're seeing more mobile research. Do you see this as like a natural enticement for millennials as well, and something they could naturally kind of fit into more seamlessly?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that there's a huge opportunity here for firms too, and I hope more people are taking advantage of it. Every time we hire somebody new at Decipher, the first thing I think is, like, what are they going to bring to the party? How can they change up our products? What new ideas are they going to have? Because unlike people in my generation, the new generation coming up has grown up with social media. They're super comfortable with it. They understand how it works. They have different expectations for privacy and what can be done with data. And I think it's a whole new interesting perspective that we lose out on as research firms if we don't really embrace millennials and really try to integrate them into our business in meaningful ways. I think that's the essence of new product development, and really the essence of moving our business ahead in a fundamental way is, how do we incorporate this new thinking and really open ourselves up to getting input from a younger generation, which is definitely more connected and more wired than I ever was at that age. So yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of opportunities there, and I also feel that millennials today are a lot more willing to take risks in terms of starting businesses, and they're more willing to take mistakes and just to kind of noodle around with things and try to figure out what works. But I also feel like firms need to give their employees the space to work on those things and to be creative. If you're just trying to shove everybody into the same box over and over again and do the same types of research you've done for the last 20 or 30 years, you're losing out on this whole fresh perspective and a whole new way of doing things. And so I do hope, that we're giving people the opportunity to really experiment and grow and figure out ways to sort of move our products and our services into the next millennium.
So you talk about, Kristin, like giving young people opportunities, to shine really and to use their skills. Like how in Decipher, how in your company, how do you give people this opportunity to shine?
Yeah, it's always challenging in a business because you have a business to run day to day. But at the same time, you do want to provide space for creativity. And there's a couple different things we do. We have for engineering department, we do a hackathon, like a code off, where they get to just noodle around and create new products that they're sort of interested in. The other thing that we do is we do an Innovator of the Month award, and it just goes to somebody who's created a process, service, new idea that either makes our client lives better or makes our internal processes better. And so that kind of keeps people thinking all the time, because people really want to win that award. What can I do that is going to, change or enhance the way that we do things. And I think for us, particularly because we offer software, we license software, what we really want to do is get new hires into that software package and really play around with it and tell us, from an outsider's perspective, like what's working, what's not working, what would you do differently? Because some of the best products and services we offer are things that we've developed, but someone else has come in and say, hey, that's really cool, but wouldn't it be even cooler if it could do this? Or I saw this new app or this new technology. It would be really cool if we could sync those two together. So I think part of it too is just having an open enough work environment where people feel like they can actually give their opinion. I feel like one of the things that my partners and I do is we try to be really accessible. And that means that anybody in the staff can come talk to us anytime. I travel pretty extensively, but people know they can reach out to me on email. They can call my cell. I'm always available, and I think that's important as well. Is just providing that level of access, and to know that your opinion is important.
So is this, Kristin, a sense of personal responsibility, do you feel, almost to the industry? Are you saying, of course, that the millennials can bring something to the table? It's not just a debt responsibility. In that sense, it's a two-way street. They've got skills that you want to harness as well, of course. But is it, as a experienced researcher yourself, is this an individual responsibility that you feel, and also that, if so, other researchers should have as well?
Really made it a priority for myself to help mentor and grow the next generation of researchers, particularly as it comes to women in research. I'm sure both of you are aware, I run a women in research group for the industry, and we have a mentoring program that's part of that group. And I think mentoring is really tricky because you can't force it. It has to happen sort of organically. But I do feel like mentoring is a really important component of what we all need to do in the industry to sort of bring up the next generation of researchers, and that can be formally or informally. I think sometimes people get too hung up on the idea of having this really formal mentoring relationship, and I don't feel like that's how most mentoring happens. I feel like most mentoring happens more organically, in that you form relationships and you find someone that's excited about the same things you're excited about, and who genuinely wants to learn, or who genuinely wants to share information. And so, I would encourage people not to get so hung up on like, ooh, we have to establish this formal mentoring relationship, but more so, what can I do to be helpful on a day-to-day basis to someone who's just coming up in the business?
And it's like competitions like the Young Researcher of the Year award, obviously, Kristin, are a really, really good way of reaching out as well. Have those been in place for like many years? And are you finding there's really good, is it two-sided? Obviously, you create these awards and these ways of reaching out. Is there real interest from young people? Are you having a lot of people applying and some fantastic entries?
The Young Researcher of the Year award is SMR's program, and I was only actually aware of it as of last year, and you know, I've seen it at the conferences a couple times, and I specifically went last year because I was really interested in a presentation that Danielle Todd was given. And so I really wanted to see her presentation, and that's why I ended up going and actually got involved with Young Researcher of the Year. I think it's an excellent program. I'd love to see more programs like that. I know Lenny Murphy in the U.S., as part of his IIEX program, is now doing this startup competition. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's for and I can't, gosh, he's going to kill me because I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's this really, you know, it's an interesting thing because it's basically a startup competition at a conference where, you know, if you have a new business or a new business idea, you come and you pitch that on stage, and then he awards it, and there's a monetary cash prize for the winning business. And I think programs like that are really, really important to the business because, one, it encourages young people to speak up, and secondly, it also encourages entrepreneurism, which I think is something that we need more of in this business. You know, we need more creative ways of reaching out to people, and we need people who are more comfortable with new technologies and social media to really step up to the plate and create new products and services. And so, yeah, I mean, I think those types of programs are really invaluable, and, you know, kudos to SMR and also to Lenny for creating those opportunities for people.
Awesome. Now, one thing I am aware of millennials is a lot might have been made of their kind of internet retention span. And so, speaking of which, I'd like to thank you, Kristin, for coming on. I don't want this to go over too long because I want this to go out to them, and I want them to watch it all, and also to our fellow researchers as well, of course. So I want to thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your opinions and thoughts. It's been great. And yeah, thank you.